The first thing I felt was the rain. Cold, relentless, soaking through my torn clothes as I knelt on the asphalt. The sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, but all I could see was him, Liam, lying motionless beneath the flickering streetlight. His blood was warm against my trembling hands. Mine wasn't. I could feel the life leaving me in shallow breaths, in the metallic taste pooling in my mouth. The world blurred into red and white, headlights slicing through the darkness. He was saying something, my name, maybe, but I couldn't hear it anymore. My ears were filled with the pounding of my heart, or maybe that was the rain. All I knew was that I had pushed him out of the way first. The car had hit me instead. "Don't cry," I whispered, though no sound came out. "At least this time. I saved you." My vision dimmed around the edges. Somewhere deep inside, a dull ache of regret bloomed. Not because I was dying, but because I hadn't been able to stop everything else that had gone wrong before this. The betrayal. The loss. The choices that led us here. Maybe this was what fate wanted all along. I closed my eyes, and the world disappeared. When I opened them again, sunlight flooded the room. I blinked, dazed. There was no rain, no blood, no sirens. Just the faint hum of my alarm clock and the soft scent of lavender from the candle on my nightstand. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Then I saw the calendar on the wall. April 2nd, 2020. My breath caught in my throat. No. That couldn't be right. It was supposed to be 2025. I stumbled out of bed, nearly tripping over a pile of clothes, and grabbed my phone. The lock screen flashed to life with the same date, April 2nd, 2020. 5 years earlier. My hands shook. I stared at the familiar wallpaper, a picture of my best friend, Emily, and me at her graduation. That photo had been deleted years ago after everything happened. I sank onto the bed, clutching the phone. The memories came rushing back like a flood. Emily's disappearance, Liam's betrayal, the company scandal, the fire that took my family's home, every tragedy that had led to that final night. And now, I was here again. Alive. I pressed my palm to my chest, feeling my heart beating strong and steady. No wounds. No pain. Just the echo of what had been. Was this a second chance? A punishment? I didn't know. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let fate lead me down the same road again. Even if it meant never meeting Liam. I stood up, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My younger self looked back, eyes wide, unscarred, filled with a naive hope I no longer felt. "I won't make the same mistakes," I whispered. "Not this time." Outside, the morning sun broke through the clouds, blindingly bright. It felt like a promise and a warning all at once. Fate had brought me back. But I would decide where I went next. The first few hours after waking up felt unreal. Every sound was sharper, the rustle of curtains, the chirping outside my window, the hum of the city beyond my apartment walls. It was as if the world had been reset, yet carried faint echoes of everything I'd lost. When I checked my reflection again, I almost didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. The circles under my eyes were lighter, my hair uncut, unburned by stress. My skin didn't carry the faint scar that had once run along my collarbone, proof of the night Liam and I had barely escaped an explosion. It was all gone. Wiped clean. I took a deep breath, letting the shock settle into a strange, cautious calm. If I was really back in 2020, then I had time, 5 years, to be exact, to change everything. To save Emily. To protect my family. To keep myself away from Liam. Especially Liam. I forced myself to repeat it, like a mantra. Do not meet him. Do not fall in love again. Do not save him this time. But fate, as I was starting to remember, never made things that simple. The world outside was painfully familiar. The cafe across the street, the cracked sidewalk near the subway, the billboard advertising the company that would one day destroy hundreds of lives, including mine. I grabbed a coffee from the corner shop, sitting near the window as I tried to think. What was the right move? Should I warn Emily about the man she'd soon date, the one who would drag her into that investment scandal? Should I quit my job before I even start it next week, the same job that would lead me to Liam? My fingers tightened around the cup. My memories were sharp, but my emotions, they were even sharper. Every detail of that doomed love still burned behind my ribs, the warmth of his smile, the way he used to brush hair out of my face, the desperate way he'd held me in the end. And the betrayal that had shattered everything. I'd thought he was my savior. Turns out, he was just another piece in fate's cruel design. Isla. The sound of my name snapped me out of my thoughts. I turned, and my heart stopped. Liam. He stood by the counter, sunlight catching in his dark hair, his usual easy smile tugging at the corners of his lips. He looked younger, of course he did, but that didn't make it any easier to breathe. My hands went cold. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not yet. He hadn't noticed me yet. Thank God. I ducked my head, praying he wouldn't turn around. But then, as if the universe was laughing at me, the barista called out, "Order for Liam." And just like that, he looked over. Our eyes met. It was like being dragged backward through time, all the laughter, the tears, the night spent clinging to him when everything else was falling apart. I felt every wound I'd ever healed split open again. He frowned slightly, as if trying to place me. "Hey, sorry, have we met before?" I forced a smile, my pulse thundering in my ears. "No," I said, voice steady even though my heart wasn't. "I don't think so." He smiled politely and turned away, taking his coffee. But before he left, he glanced back once more. Just a quick, curious look. And I realized, with a sinking feeling, that even if I wanted to rewrite fate, it was already writing itself again. As I watched him walk out into the sunlight, I whispered to myself, "Not this time. I won't let you ruin us again." But somewhere deep down, a quieter voice whispered back, "What if this time, it's you who saves him?" For the rest of the day, I couldn't shake the feeling of his gaze. That one moment, Liam looking at me as if he almost remembered something, looped in my head like a song I couldn't stop humming. I shouldn't have gone to that cafe. I knew that. It had been the same place where we first met in my last life. Maybe some part of me had been curious, reckless enough to tempt fate. But seeing him again had reminded me how dangerous the past could be when it was given another chance. By evening, I tried to anchor myself in something practical, something solid. I dug out my old laptop and pulled up my calendar. April 2020. In exactly 3 weeks, Emily would meet Nathan, her future boyfriend, the man who would use her name to launder company funds and then vanish, leaving her to take the blame. She would disappear that same year. Her body would never be found. That was the first tragedy I had to stop. I opened a blank note, my fingers trembling. "Timeline," I typed. Then, "Stop Emily from meeting Nathan. Quit job at Vetratech before June. Avoid Liam at all costs." Each word felt heavy, like I was carving the rules of my survival into stone. The next day, Emily burst into my apartment like she always had, her laughter spilling in before she did. "Isla, you're not answering your phone again." She plopped onto the couch, still wearing her scrubs from her nursing shift. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I almost laughed at the irony. "You could say that." She squinted at me, then smiled. "You worry too much. You always do." If only she knew. I studied her, the way her hazel eyes shone, the faint freckles under her eyes. She looked so alive. So unburdened by the years of grief that I remembered. My throat tightened. I said softly. "Promise me something." She tilted her head. "Okay. Just, be careful who you trust, all right? Especially if someone new shows up. A man. Tall, charming, kind of too confident for his own good." She laughed. "What is this, a prophecy?" "Just promise me." She rolled her eyes but nodded. "Fine, I promise. No mysterious men for me." If only promises could rewrite destiny. That night, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights. I told myself I was doing the right thing. I had a plan. I was in control. Then, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hi. This is going to sound weird, but are you the woman from the cafe yesterday? I think you left your scarf behind." My chest tightened. I hadn't brought a scarf. Liam. Of course. I stared at the message for a long time, fingers hovering over the screen. He shouldn't have remembered me. There was no reason for him to. Not in this timeline. And yet, he had reached out anyway. I typed a quick reply. "Sorry, that's not mine. Must have been someone else." A moment later, 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, his message came. "Maybe I'm mistaken. Still, if you ever want to grab coffee, that place has terrible croissants but great lighting. You seem like someone who notices things like that." I dropped the phone onto the couch and buried my face in my hands. He was already circling back into my life, like a thread being pulled tight no matter how hard I tried to cut it. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it was restless. I dreamt of the night I died again, of Liam shouting my name, of the screech of tires. But when I looked back in the dream, it wasn't me lying in the street this time. It was him. I woke up with tears on my face and a whisper caught in my throat. Not again. I got up, pulled open my laptop, and typed his name into the search bar. Liam Hayes. His company profile popped up, smiling, bright, full of ambition. The same year, he'd be recruited into Vetratech's security division. That was where it would all begin. I hovered over his picture, heart aching. If fate wanted to drag him into ruin again, I could stop it. Not by loving him, but by staying away, and by saving him from afar. Maybe that was the redemption I was meant to earn. I had always believed in consequences, not destiny. Even after dying, waking up 5 years earlier, and staring at my own ghost of a past, I told myself there had to be a reason, a logic, to how all this worked. But fate doesn't care for logic. It just watches, quietly amused, as you try to outthink it. The first ripple came a week later. I was on my way to meet an old colleague at Vetratech, the company where everything had started. My plan was simple: get information. I wanted to find out when Liam would be hired and where the first cracks in the company's system began. If I could interfere early, maybe I could stop the scandal that would destroy so many lives. But even as I rehearsed my questions, unease crawled beneath my skin. I knew this building too well. The tall glass facade reflecting the sky, the sterile scent of the lobby, the distant hum of computers, it all carried the echo of my downfall. As I stepped inside, I caught sight of a familiar face at the reception desk. Marcus Lee. In the previous timeline, he'd been part of the cyber team, the one accused of the data breach that led to the collapse. I remembered his mugshot, the headlines. Now, he smiled at me politely. "Can I help you?" I hesitated. "Yes, I'm here to see Dana Chu. I used to intern under her." He nodded and picked up the phone. "I'll let her know you're here." As I waited, I glanced around the lobby. Everything was the same, except for one thing. Liam. He was here. Standing near the elevators, in conversation with a group of recruiters, his hands tucked into his pockets like he had all the time in the world. My heart froze. This wasn't right. According to my memory, he wasn't supposed to start at Vetratech for another month. Had my interference already changed something? He turned, as if sensing my gaze. His eyes met mine, and there it was again. That flicker of recognition he shouldn't have had. I spun away quickly, pretending to check my phone, but my pulse was racing. "Isla!" Dana's voice came from behind me. She smiled warmly, leading me toward her office. "It's been ages. I didn't expect to see you here again." "Yeah," I said, forcing a laugh. "I just wanted to catch up." As we talked, I kept stealing glances at the glass door, half expecting Liam to walk past. He didn't, but I couldn't shake the feeling that fate had just rewritten something in real time. After the meeting, I sat in a nearby park, watching the city blur into motion. I felt dizzy. If Liam was already at Vetratech, my timeline was off. The scandal might happen sooner. Or differently. I pulled out my notebook, flipping to the page labeled Timeline. I scribbled new notes. Liam hired early. Marcus still present. Data breach still possible. The list looked harmless on paper, but my gut told me something had shifted beneath the surface, like I'd stepped on a fault line and felt the tremor before the quake. That night, Emily called. "Guess what?" she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Remember how I promised no mysterious men? Well, turns out one found me. We met at a medical conference. His name's Nathan." I froze. "Emily." My voice came out sharper than I meant. "You said you wouldn't." I know, she laughed. "But he's really sweet. Nothing sketchy about him, I swear. He even said he knows some people at Vetratech." My stomach dropped. Fate wasn't just pushing back. It was rerouting. The world wasn't resisting my changes. It was adapting, bending around them to reach the same destination by a different path. I said, swallowing hard. "Can you promise me something again? Just be careful, okay? If anything feels off, tell me." She hesitated. "You're scaring me a little." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Just trust me." After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time, staring at my phone screen. My reflection looked back, tired, haunted. I had thought I could cheat fate by walking a different road. But maybe fate didn't care which road I took, as long as I arrived at the same ending. Still, I wasn't giving up. If the world wanted to fight me, It would have to do better than recycled heartbreak. As I turned off the light, I caught my reflection in the window again, and froze. For just a moment, in the glass, I could have sworn I saw another version of myself. Older. Eyes harder. Staring back with something that looked like warning. When I blinked, she was gone. Sleep and I had become strangers again. Each night, I closed my eyes only to reopen them in fragments of the past, dreams that felt more like memories bleeding through cracks in time. Sometimes, I saw Liam smiling. Sometimes, I saw him dying. But lately, there were flashes I didn't recognize at all. A room I'd never been in. Myself standing there, crying, whispering something to a man whose face I couldn't see. And a phrase I couldn't forget, even after waking. You weren't supposed to remember. The words lingered in my head long after dawn. I decided to distract myself with purpose. If fate wanted to replay the same tragedy, I'd make it choke on its own script. I returned to Vetratech under the guise of applying for a contractor position. The building was a monster of glass and chrome, gleaming like it had nothing to hide. This time, I wasn't here for nostalgia. I was here to change the order of things. In my last life, the data breach scandal had begun inside Vetratech's internal network. Files were leaked, falsified, and redirected to a shell company under Nathan's name, Emily's boyfriend. The perfect scapegoat. Now, I knew who the real culprits were. And I knew where the first traces appeared, the server room on the 12th floor. Getting there was surprisingly easy. A smile, a borrowed ID card, a calm voice when I told security I was there for an equipment audit. The trick to infiltrating your old workplace is remembering no one questions confidence. The hum of servers filled the narrow room, cold and constant. I ran my fingers across the cables and consoles, a shiver crawling down my spine. In this room, I thought, the first domino fell. As I plugged a flash drive into a terminal, I noticed something odd. The timestamp on the system logs, April 15, 2020. That was today. But that couldn't be right. The breach hadn't started until June. Unless my return had accelerated it. I copied the logs, heart pounding. Then I noticed another user session was already active. Someone else was remotely accessing the network at that exact moment. User, L. Hayes. Liam. My hands froze on the keyboard. Why would he be accessing the server before even joining the company? Unless. No. That wasn't possible. He couldn't remember anything. He shouldn't. I yanked out the flash drive and slipped it into my pocket, leaving the room before anyone noticed. Outside, the city buzzed beneath a pale spring sky. People hurried past, oblivious to the fragile thread of fate winding tighter around us all. My phone vibrated. A text. Liam, we keep running into each other, don't we? Maybe it's fate. Fate. The word made my chest ache. I typed back before I could stop myself, or maybe it's bad timing. 3 dots appeared, then stopped. Then appeared again. Liam, do I know you from somewhere? You feel familiar. My fingers hovered over the screen. What could I possibly say? Yes, you once loved me enough to die for me. Then I died instead. I shut my phone off. Later that night, I sat by my window again, laptop open, the city a blur of lights below. The flash drive sat beside my coffee cup, small and harmless looking. When I finally opened the files, my breath caught. There were dozens of documents, financial records, confidential emails, but buried among them was a folder titled Echo 7. Inside was a single video file. Timestamp, April 15, 2025. 5 years in the future. My hands trembled as I clicked play. Static flickered, then focused. The video showed a dimly lit office. Liam sat at a desk, older, exhausted, his face drawn in shadow. He looked directly into the camera. If you're watching this, he said, voice low, it means you made it back. I froze. You told me this would happen. That the loop would reset. That I'd forget you, but part of me wouldn't. That I'd remember enough to find you again. My throat tightened. Isla, I'm sorry. For everything. But if you've come back, it means you still think you can change it. You can't. He leaned closer, eyes fierce. Fate doesn't bend. It collects. Every change you make costs something else. Don't try to save me again. The video ended in static. I sat there for a long time, the hum of the city suddenly too loud. He remembered. Or, he had remembered once. Long enough to send this message. Long enough to try to stop me. I pressed my palms to my eyes, whispering, then what am I supposed to do? Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. The storm was coming early this year. I didn't sleep that night. Liam's face from the video burned behind my eyelids every time I blinked, his voice echoing through the dark. You told me this would happen. Don't try to save me again. Again. The word carried a weight that made my stomach twist. How many times had this loop happened? How many lives had I lived, believing I was being reborn for the first time? The thought made me sick. If Liam had remembered enough to leave that message, then maybe he'd been caught in this cycle too. Maybe he'd been dying and waking and losing me over and over, just like I had. Or maybe he'd found a way to break it, and I was the one dragging us back. By morning, I'd made a decision. I needed to talk to him. Not as the stranger I was pretending to be, but as the woman who remembered everything. When I arrived at Vetra Tech, the receptionist smiled and pointed toward the lobby cafe. Mr. Hayes is down there. He said you might stop by. He said that. Yep. She laughed. You two must have great timing. I didn't even remember telling anyone I was coming. Fate was getting smug now. Liam sat by the window, sunlight spilling across the table. He looked exactly the way he had 5 years ago, the curve of his smile, the warmth in his eyes. The sight of him hurt more than I'd expected. He looked up when I approached. You came. I hesitated. You were expecting me. He tilted his head, studying me. I don't know. I just had a feeling. A feeling. The same phrase he'd used the day he confessed to me in the last timeline. My chest tightened. Can we talk? I asked quietly. He nodded, and I sat across from him. For a moment, the air between us felt charged, like the world was holding its breath. I watched a video, I said finally. From the future. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes flickered, recognition or fear. What kind of video? It was you, I said. 5 years from now. You said I told you this would happen. That the loop would reset. He went still. Then, slowly, he whispered, so it's real. My pulse quickened. You've been remembering things, haven't you? He looked down, his fingers tightening around his coffee cup. Flashes. Dreams that feel too real to be dreams. Sometimes I wake up and I know things I shouldn't. Like your name, before I ever heard it. My breath caught. Sometimes I see you dying, he continued, voice trembling. Every time I try to save you, I fail. And then it all starts over. I thought I was losing my mind. A tear slid down my cheek before I could stop it. You're not. We both remember. He exhaled shakily, leaning back. Then that means we've done this before. Maybe more times than we know. He laughed bitterly. And each time, we try to save each other. And each time, I said softly, one of us dies. Silence settled between us, heavy and fragile. Finally, Liam said, I used to think fate was something we could fight. That if I just loved you enough, I could change the ending. But what if loving you is the reason it keeps happening? That's not true, I said, too quickly. We just have to find the right way. There has to be one version of this where we both live. He looked up, eyes dark with something like resignation. You really believe that? I wanted to. I wanted to believe that this time was different, that my pain hadn't been for nothing. But deep down, I could feel the thread of fate tightening again, drawing us back to the same inevitable crossroads. I can't lose you again, I whispered. He reached across the table, his hand brushing mine. Then maybe we stop trying to save each other. I frowned. What do you mean? Maybe the only way to end the loop is to let go. The word sliced through me. Let go. After everything I'd endured, after dying, waking, clawing my way back through time, how could I simply let go? Before I could answer, the lights above us flickered. The cafe's hum dimmed into a low, electric buzz. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. Then, just behind Liam, I saw myself. The older version from the reflection, eyes hollow, mouth half open as if mid-warning, standing there like a ghost bleeding through glass. Liam followed my gaze, but when he turned, she was gone. I grabbed his hand, trembling. You saw that, right? He nodded slowly. It's starting again. Outside, thunder cracked across the city, the same storm that had marked the night of my death before. But it was weeks too early. Fate wasn't waiting this time. We had changed too much, and the world was trying to correct itself. That night, as we stood on the rain-soaked street, the same intersection where everything had once ended, I realized something terrifying. If fate couldn't separate us by time, it would do it another way. Rain. Always the rain. It began as a whisper on the pavement, then a roar against the glass. By the time Liam and I stepped outside, the sky had split open, painting the city in streaks of silver. It wasn't just weather. I knew that instinctively. This storm was a memory, trying to replay itself. "This is it," I whispered. "The night it happened." Liam looked up, rainwater sliding down his jaw. "You mean the night you died?" I nodded. 5 years from now. Yes. But if the loop's collapsing, it's pulling that moment forward. The ending wants to happen now. He gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "You make it sound like the universe has a grudge." "Maybe it does," I murmured. "Maybe it's tired of us breaking the rules." Lightning flared, illuminating the familiar intersection ahead, the same crosswalk, the same streetlight flickering like a dying heartbeat. Every nerve in my body screamed that something terrible was about to happen. We ran for shelter beneath a store awning. Thunder rolled overhead, shaking the ground. The smell of wet asphalt hit me like déjà vu. "This place," Liam said softly. "Why does it feel so familiar?" "Because it's where everything ended before." He stared at me, eyes wide. "You mean?" "Yes. You were standing there." I pointed to the crosswalk. "A car came out of nowhere. I pushed you out of the way. And you died," I finished. He took a step back, as if the memory itself had physical weight. "So this is it. The final loop." "I think so." He exhaled, a long, trembling breath. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw all the lifetimes of grief behind his eyes. "Do you ever wonder," he said, "what if the universe isn't cruel? What if it's just waiting for us to understand something?" "Understand what?" "That saving each other was never the point." I shook my head, tears mixing with rain. "No. We've come too far for that. There has to be a reason we both remember now." "Maybe the reason," he said quietly, "is to learn how to say goodbye." Before I could respond, a blinding flash lit the street, and I heard it, the screech of tires. My body moved before my mind did. I turned, heart pounding, as headlights cut through the rain. A car, swerving, out of control. Exactly like before. Liam lunged forward, but I caught his arm. "No!" I shouted. "Not this time." He froze, confusion flashing across his face. "If I save you," I gasped, "the loop resets. You die, I come back. Over and over." He stared at me, realization dawning. "Then what do we do?" I met his eyes. "We break it." I pulled him close, pressed my forehead against his, and whispered, "Trust me." Then, before he could stop me, I stepped into the street. The world slowed. Raindrops hung in the air like glass beads. The car loomed, suspended between seconds. My heartbeat was thunder in my chest. And then, everything fractured. Images, hundreds of them, flashed through my mind, every loop, every life, every ending. Me dying. Him dying. The fire. The betrayal. The nights of silence. The same storm, the same scream. And then, something different. A memory I didn't recognize. Liam and I standing in sunlight. No blood, no sirens. Just peace. I reached for that image, clutching it like a lifeline. "That's the one," I whispered. "That's the life I want." Time snapped back into motion. The car skidded, but instead of impact, I felt arms wrap around me, pulling me down, shielding me. "Liam." We hit the ground together, the car spinning past in a shower of sparks before slamming into a pole. The noise was deafening. Then silence. I opened my eyes. He was on top of me, panting, shaking, alive. "You," I began. "I told you," he said hoarsely. "We stopped saving each other. We survived together." He laughed weakly, the sound breaking into a sob. I laughed too, breathless, hysterical. The storm began to ease. When the ambulance lights arrived, we were still holding hands. They checked us, bandaged minor cuts, asked if we wanted to go to the hospital. We both said no. As the sirens faded, I noticed something strange. The air felt lighter, like a pressure had lifted. The same intersection that once reeked of tragedy now smelled only of wet earth and ozone. The cycle was broken. We'd both lived through the night that was never meant to change. Later, sitting on the curb, Liam turned to me. Do you think this is really the end? I smiled through tears. Maybe it's the beginning we never got. He reached out, brushing a strand of wet hair from my face. Then what do we do now? I looked at the quiet street, the world reborn, free from its script, and whispered, we live. For real this time. He smiled, and for once, it wasn't tinged with sorrow. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and the clouds began to part. Above us, dawn broke through the storm, soft gold spilling over the city like forgiveness. For the first time in countless lives, I didn't feel fate watching. Just the heartbeat beside me, steady and warm. And for the first time, it felt like enough. It took weeks before I stopped waking at the sound of rain. For so long, thunder had meant endings. Now it only meant weather. Still, sometimes I lay there in the dark, counting heartbeats, half expecting the world to shatter again. It never did. The doctors said Liam and I were lucky. No broken bones, only bruises and shock. A miracle, they called it. Maybe that's what it was. If miracles were just pieces of fate we managed to steal back. We moved slowly at first, like people learning how to walk after a long coma. Simple things felt unreal. Morning coffee, quiet conversations, sunlight through open curtains. One evening, Liam showed up at my apartment with a cardboard box. Inside were photographs, some from before the scandal, some from years that technically hadn't happened anymore. He'd found them on an old drive. I don't know if these are real, he said. Maybe they're memories from one of the other loops. I sifted through them. In one photo, we were standing by the ocean, laughing. I didn't remember the trip, yet I could feel the salt wind in his arm around me. Does it matter? I asked. Real or not, they're ours. He smiled. Then let's make new ones. We took a small apartment on the east side. Bare walls, cracked tiles, sunlight in the mornings. We filled it with plants that refused to die and half-burned candles that smelled of vanilla and hope. Liam started freelancing, keeping clear of the big corporations. I took a part-time job at a local community center, teaching art classes to children. The first time I handed a brush to a girl with bright eyes and messy braids, something inside me loosened. For the first time in so many lives, I wasn't running from the future. I was teaching someone else how to color theirs. At night, Liam and I cooked badly, laughed too much, argued about whether movies with time travel made sense. We never said the words loop or fate anymore. We didn't need to. But sometimes, when the city lights flickered just right, I saw a shimmer at the edge of vision, like a reflection in glass, a ghost version of myself watching. Not angry. Just curious. One Sunday morning, I woke early to find Liam sketching at the kitchen table. He was drawing me, half asleep on the couch. I leaned against the door frame. You've been up for hours. He shrugged. Couldn't sleep. Thought if I drew you, maybe I could keep this version safe somehow. You don't need to, I said. We're already safe. He smiled, but his eyes stayed serious. I keep thinking, what if the loop didn't end? What if we just stepped sideways out of it? I crossed the room and kissed him softly. Then we keep walking sideways forever. That made him laugh, the sound I loved most in any timeline. By summer, the storm that had haunted the city became just another story on the news. Streets were repaired. People moved on. Sometimes I visited the intersection, the place where I had once died, where everything had begun and ended. It looked ordinary now, traffic lights working, fresh asphalt, a food truck parked nearby. I stood there one evening as the sun dipped low, painting the glass buildings gold. Thank you, I whispered, not to any god or ghost, but to the stubborn piece of me that had refused to stop trying. I'd thought redemption meant rewriting the past. Turns out it meant forgiving it. That night, as Liam and I sat on the balcony watching city lights pulse like stars, he reached for my hand. You ever wonder what happens to the other versions of us? He asked. I think they finally rest, I said. Or maybe they're out there somewhere, living the lives we couldn't. He nodded, thoughtful. If we ever meet them, what do you think they'd say? I smiled. Probably that we took long enough. A breeze stirred the curtains, carrying the smell of rain again, gentle, harmless. I didn't flinch this time. Inside the apartment, our old flash drive sat forgotten in a drawer. I hadn't opened it since the night of the storm. But sometimes, when the room was quiet, I thought I heard a faint hum from it, like a heartbeat caught between seconds. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was the universe remembering. Either way, I let it be. Because this time, I wasn't going to chase fate. I was going to live, moment by fragile moment, heartbeat by heartbeat, until living itself became enough of a miracle. Epilogue. Months later, while organizing supplies for my art class, I found a note slipped between the pages of a sketchbook. It wasn't mine. The handwriting was elegant, familiar. Isla. If you ever read this, it means we did it. The loop's gone. Maybe we're scattered through time like brushstrokes, but somewhere we found peace. Keep creating. That's how you keep the world from resetting. L. I laughed softly, tucking the note back into the pages. Outside, children's voices echoed down the hall, calling my name. I turned toward the sound, toward the present. For the first time in forever, the future didn't scare me. It simply waited, open, quiet, and full of light. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.